Greetings, everyone. It is I, Marshall Bohemond, and I am smug-maxing right now, because, yeah. So, as of last night, after the absolutely asinine decision to completely delete the Deathwatch faction and use the Imperial Agent's Codex as a dumping ground for it, there has been an announcement by Games Workshop, and that is quite simply that the Deathwatch faction is being reinstated in a digital rules release in December. Now, okay, let's get everyone up on the history of what is going on here. Let me find my info, and right here. Okay, so, what you're looking at is a response from the Games Workshop Facebook page. This was the first info on what was coming. This was in response to the Facebook post about The Enemy Without, the new CGI short film put out on the Warhammer Plus website right after the ending of the Warhammer Day reveal stream. And in the post, a Mr. Ned Woodsmansey, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, I don't pretend to know how to speak English, despite it being my first language, says, "Shame about the whole faction being gone, though, isn't it? Oh no, sorry, you can take allies." This is an obvious, dig at how Games Workshop said, oh, you can still play Deathwatch. You can just play regular Space Marines, dress them up as Deathwatch, and then take 2 allied squads. I pray you don't want to take Corvus Black Stars, though. They take up the same slots as your Deathwatch squads. Also, they're not considered Space Marines anymore, so they don't get any of the accompanying rules. The Imperial Agent's Codex was kind of a clusterfuck, let's be real, and it's kind of a shame. It's more or less there just to have the allied units, and I'll go more into that in a minute, but more to the point. The Warhammer 40,000 account, the Games Workshop, account for Facebook, said in response the following: "We hear you. Good news. The studio is right now working on a digital update that will once again see Deathwatch armies taken to the battlefield in games of Warhammer 40,000. It's expected in December." All right, now, I know what y'all thinking. It's a Facebook post. How accurate can that be? I mean, let's be real here. Games Workshop's community pages are a clusterfuck at the best of times. That is a well-known fact. They get things wrong all the time. They spout things off without approval. They're just not reliable most of the time. And you see, that's what I didn't want to believe, but I kept in my head as a possibility. But then later today, on the Warhammer community website, they put out an article about The Enemy Without. That's the new short that they released yesterday. And a bunch of talking about products they've made with Bandai Namco. I can speak English. Bandai Namco. You know what? I'm not editing that out. I'm keeping that flub in. Bandai Namco, who worked to help make the short, and they were talking about some products with them. They talk about the events. They're talking with the director. Director Erasmus Brodsow, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Not his first go with Warhammer. If you've ever seen the Lord Inquisitor short film, he worked on that too. But yeah, good stuff. It was a good short. It was fun to watch. I watched it live with some friends. But at the what's important here is at the bottom of the announcement. We will zoom in on this. This is the big one, the big thing to go along with this. P.S. On the subject of Deathwatch, lots of you have gotten in touch over the last few weeks with your thoughts on the way that Deathwatch kill teams now work in games of Warhammer 40,000. Okay, we hear you. A couple squads is not enough. You want to mobilize the might of a full watch fortress. While such deployments are rare in the 41st millennium, I mean, not really. Deathwatch at least numbers similarly to Black Templars in like the 10,000 plus range, but that's neither here nor there. They are not unknown, and the Order of Xenos and the Warhammer Studio, for that matter, are not deaf to the many calls for aid. So we can confirm today that in December, we'll be releasing a digital update with more options to take your Deathwatch army to the field and lay low the alien menace. Watch this space. And yet, there it is. There is the news. Right there for all to see. They are reinstating Deathwatch as a faction in Warhammer 40,000 via a digital rules update. Now, okay, this obviously raises questions. I'd say first and foremost being, what the fuck did they think was going to happen? I mean, they squatted a faction with zero preamble. It was just gone. And with they made a big cope response of like, oh, you can just still take Deathwatch colored Space Marines with the shoulder pads and just run allied Deathwatch in them. That's just the same as what you want, which is no. I said it when I did my video on the Imperial Agents announcement a while back, that the way they implemented Deathwatch into that codex was a failure, both in terms of game design and in terms of lore and in terms of treatment of the players. The Imperial Agents Codex just kind of was a failure. It is not well balanced. It pretty much strictly exists as a dumping ground for minor Imperium factions, that so they can have a place to take them from when allying with other groups. And you know what? That's fine. It's okay that exists. The problem was taking a actual popular Space Marine tabletop faction and effectively killing it, squatting it, as is the term, to then take the unique units that they get and putting them in the Imperial Agents Codex effectively as a dumping ground. Now, I know what some might think. Some might think that's conspiratorial of me to say that, oh, they weren't really going to kill Deathwatch. Here's the problem, though. It's the fact that Deathwatch are a battle line unit in the Imperial Agents Codex. Unlike, they're not a requisitioned unit like the Grey Knight Terminators or the Battle Sister Squad and their related vehicle options. They are considered battle line units. They are considered part of the Codex. One of its primary choices for filling out your army. And I guess the question is, how did this happen? How did we get here? Is a good question. Well, I have my theories on this, and I'm going to go into this. I want you all to understand that this is pure schizo-posting wank on my part. Since the female custodes thing, I have decided to trust my own instincts on these matters rather than, DMs I get promising insider information. So I don't want to do that again. So I don't want to fuck up like that again. So understand this. This is pure schizo-posting conspiracy theory wank on my part. But it's my conspiracy theory, so I'm sticking to it. Now that said, here's what I believe went on with Deathwatch in 10th edition. And what I believe is that the faction as a Codex supplement was meant to debut alongside Imperial Agents. Deathwatch were meant to be requisition units, just like the Sisters of Battle and the Grey Knights, the other Chambers militant factions. And essentially what happened was, we know for a fact at this point, there's effectively two factions within Games Workshop fighting over control of how content is published in Games Workshop's games. This is like a lot of the seemingly contrasting viewpoints you will see on certain games are like this. No models for like no two games will ever share models as one. That was like one thing that was said is going to be a thing going forward. And then we had, like, say, the beasts the beasts of chaos completely squatted from Age of Sigmar after building them up as the next big antagonist going into the next edition. Also, things like, say, certain factions not appearing in the old world, except it is all but confirmed at this point that one of those factions, Skaven, will be appearing in the old world in the future. So that's being gone back on. So that's, rumored to be having gone back on. I think, what do you call it? I think there might have been something about Horus Heresy and Legions Imperialis as well. For some reason, I don't know why. Those two. I don't remember that one clearly, though, so don't take my word on that one. But, yeah. Effectively, a schism within Games Workshop on how to handle distribution of models, rules, etc. And something leaning toward confirming this is the delay on codexes going forward now in 10th edition, with Blood Angels capping off the 2024 releases. That was the statement. Except now we have Deathwatch getting a digital rules release, which is a violation of that. If I had to guess what's happening is that there's going to be a paradigm shift in the release of rules for 10th edition, and this has put a delay on further releases, like releases that could have come out this year. And I believe this delay ultimately is what happened with Deathwatch. I think, if I had to wager a guess, with Deathwatch featuring so heavily in Space Marine 2 and the Enemy Without short film being part of the Warhammer Day releases, I think Deathwatch were probably going to be the capstone book of 2024 for Warhammer 40k. I think it and Imperial Agents probably would have released after Blood Angels. I don't think they were supposed to release before. It feels to me like parts of the Imperial Agents Codex were rushed. Very basic rules, there are very basic rules mistakes in Imperial Agents that would not have, even for Games Workshop's quality assurance, would not have crossed, not have made it through. I think a good example of that is the rhinos that can hold 12 tanks rules fuck up. It's clear to me that was rushed, and what strikes me, what I think was going to go down, was that they were releasing paired codexes. That was the thing in 2024. And I think they were going to release Imperial Agents and the Deathwatch Codex supplement for Codex Space Marines as a paired release. But I think the internal struggles in Games Workshop led to Deathwatch being delayed. Because a part of what ties into this is the whole thing with units having multiple stat lines is apparently one of these points of contention between the two sides in Games Workshop. And Deathwatch function off different stat lines in their unit cards. This was part of the Index release and previous Codex releases. How Deathwatch kill teams can have models with different stat lines, Fortis kill teams with bikes, or Proteus kill teams with Terminators and bikes, etc. I think the argument over this caused a delay in the Codex supplement release, and if you can hear that airplane passing overhead, I am sorry. And what happened is, I believe the people writing the Imperial Agents Codex sued to cancel the Deathwatch Codex and hastily put parts of it into Imperial Agents as a stopgap measure, turning Deathwatch units from requisitioned into Deathwatch veteran squads and Corvus Black Stars from requisitioned units into battle line and dedicated transport, and throwing in the two commander units, the Watchmaster and Watch Captain Artemis. I think that ultimately they convinced corporate to ditch the Codex rather than suffer an embarrassing setback in release when they were going to try and release it alongside all this Deathwatch hype that has seemingly come out of nowhere. And I think ultimately they were bit in the ass by this. Deathwatch players complained to hell and back. I mean, there was the irony of, the people who got mad about the Blood Angels models in the same breath saying, oh, who cares, Deathwatch got squatted, no one likes them. But, ultimately, yeah, GW has faced a lot of pushback this year between the female Custodes debacle, and which I still don't think is going to make it to 11th edition, I will point out, and the squatting Deathwatch. So yeah, the complaints were high, and then all this Deathwatch hype material came out. And now you've got this this is probably the biggest influx of new players that are new fans that GW has seen since the great big, COVID rush of 2020. And they have this faction featured heavily in Space Marine 2, but they find out, oh, they're just like, it's just like 5 units in an Imperial Agent's Codex with no actual army of their own. And I think and then they're going to be hearing from veteran players about what happened to Deathwatch, and they're going to be complaining because they want to play Deathwatch. So I think between the Deathwatch players complaining and the new players complaining, GW Corporate has no choice but to dust off the rules they binned for Deathwatch and now release those as a digital supplement, because there is no way they can release it and charge for it and save face. If I'm going to make my predictions now regarding the rules and what I think these rules are going to be, I think it's just going to be, all it really needs to be, which is modified to reflect current releases, a modification of the Deathwatch index from the launch of 10th edition. If I had to wager things that would change, Deathwatch Terminators might lose the plasma cannon if Games Workshop isn't too keen on requiring a bit from the the Dark Angels upgrade sprue. But equally so, that requires spending money, which GW is always okay with. We might see Proteus kill teams go away, mostly due to the loss of Firstborn Bikers. We might see Deathwatch veteran Bikers either go away or become Outrider veterans to match the Primaris bikes. And I personally, I think we might end up seeing Outriders removed from Fortis kill teams, the Mark 10 Tacticus kill teams. Yeah, we might see the Outriders be removed from those and replaced with Jump Assault Intercessors. I think the kill teams themselves, Fortis, Spectrus, and I think Spectrum or Spectrus, the Phobos armor ones, and the I can't remember the Gravis armor kill team. We might see those come back. It wouldn't really take much to change them. An update for Fortis kill teams to have once again jump pack intercessors, Infernus Marines, and Desolator Marines would be nice. But at the same time, I see those changes happening potentially. I see, an update for restrictions on Deathwatch, like, no scouts. The Terminators and Outriders would be their veteran equivalent, stuff like that, Nothing really major. I see Imperial Agents facing the most change going forward, rather than the Deathwatch rules from the Index. I see Deathwatch veterans in the future potentially becoming Deathwatch veterans and I see Deathwatch veterans and Corvus Blackstars becoming requisitioned rather than battle-lined and transports, and I see potentially Watch Captain Artemis and the Watchmaster being removed from Imperial agents. I also predict everything related to the Ordo Xenos detachment is going to be cut out and replaced with something else in probably the next balance data slate. That's when I would predict to see it. I could be wrong, but honestly, I feel like they're going to try to fix the situation with as little damage, as little damage to something popular that they can do, which means I think they're going to regulate most of what used to be Deathwatch back into the rules for Deathwatch, and I think it will be Imperial agents that changes the most, in all honesty. That's my prediction. Remember, this could come true. It could not, but ultimately that is what I see Games Workshop doing in the face of this to save face after this whole debacle and all associated conspiratorial rumor theories on my part. How much of it is true? Maybe none of it. How much of it could come true? I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't. But this is what to me seems like the most likely scenario from Games Workshop. So on that note, I'm gonna end the video here. I will try to stay abreast of Games Workshop news and make more videos going forward. More Warhammer news. And until then, this has been Marshall Bohemond. Take care, Crusaders. Stay safe out there, and have a good day.